Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are all doing swell today. Let me just adjust this a little bit here. There we go. Sorry about that. I'm still trying to get a tripod, so I apologize if it looks like I'm a bobblehead when I'm doing this. So today actually took me a bit of time because I didn't really know what I wanted to talk about, and I was in my prayer time today, and I asked the Lord kind of what He wanted me to speak on to you guys today about. And He brought something to my attention, and usually, like I always say, a lot of the times when I'm talking to you guys about something, a lot of the time it has to do with something that the Lord shows me or deals with me on. So, and before I get started, I just want to remind you guys that tomorrow at 10 a.m. Edmonton time, I'm going to be doing a Q&A. So if you guys want to show up for that and bring your tough questions with you, I'm going to try to answer them as best as possible. And if I don't know the answer to the question, I'm not going to pretend like I do, and I will say, you know what, I will look into that and I will do a video on that question. And so bring your questions, and even if you have questions about myself or my testimony or anything about me in general or A.C.E Ministries, or just, you're seeking out God or wanting to be a Christian, you have some interesting questions, bring them. I love it. I love having these kind of conversations. So yeah, 10 a.m. on Friday. So today, guys, I'm going to talk about the bait of Satan, and probably the best bait he likes to put on his hook when it comes to getting Christians. And that bait is offense. There was a very wise pastor out in Devon in Disciple Christian Motorcycle Club, or Disciples Way Christian Coffee House. He's a pastor out there. And if you haven't been out that church, I highly recommend you check it out, because it is... if you want some steak and potatoes as far as the word goes, let me tell you, that's about as big as the steak gets, if you know what I mean. But anyway, one of the things he used to say, and he said this all the time, was the number one way that Satan gets at Christians, and the way he traps Christians, is with offense. He could not be more on point and more on the truth with that in regards to that. And so I kind of was reminded this morning about that, and I did a little bit of digging and research into offense in the Bible and kind of what Jesus says about it. So I'm going to talk to you guys about that today. So obviously the bait, this main bait that Satan uses for us to keep us from doing things for God and keeping us and getting closer with God, is offense. In Luke 17:1, he makes it very clear. He says that and this is what it says. It says, then he said to his disciples, it is impossible that no offenses should come, but woe to him, though, whom they come. And so he makes it clear that if you think you're never going to be offended, you got another thing coming, because as Christians, it's like you are going to get offended. An offense is going to come. It's not a matter of if or will, it's when. And Jesus makes that clear in his word in Luke 17:1. And the thing I found interesting, I looked a little bit deeper into that, and the word offense that they use in that verse, in the original Greek, I'm hoping I pronounce this right, but it's scandalon is the word that they use. And actually what scandalon means in Greek is it was a trap that hunters would use to catch birds. It's like a flip trap. The bird goes in, the thing shuts, and the bird is ultimately trapped in there for its demise to be eaten. And so, yeah, the word, when they used offense in the original Greek, it actually was referring to like a baited trap. So I found that quite interesting. And so, in my own life, and I've had multiple times where I have had held offense for long periods of time, and I've seen the effects that has on me and my family and things like that. And we are going to be offended, guys. It's going to happen, but offense holds you captive, guys, like a trap. It's like Satan's got just his friggin' claws in you. You know what I mean? And And it's a very good trap he uses, because it can fester into things you can't even possibly imagine, And so, offense holds us captive. And instead of us, in everything we're doing, the water of life should be coming out of us. But now that water of life is tainted with poison, and that poison's offense, right? So, when we want to be doing things and having, the water of life coming out of us, what I mean, metaphorically speaking anyway, when we hold offense and bitterness towards other family members, enemies, whoever it is, that taints your living water with poison, guys. And it's like that good old adage goes, or that saying goes, holding unforgiveness or offense towards someone is almost like drinking poison yourself and expecting it to affect the other person. And that's really kind of what poison's like. You're really damaging yourself, your own spirit, your own soul, and it's really doing nothing to the other person that you're offended with. You may think it is, but probably they really could care less. So that being said, if you have offense or you're offended, what do you do about it? What should we do about it? So the one thing I find very interesting in the Bible, and a lot of people don't catch this when they read their Bible, but I find it very interesting how when Jesus talks about prayer, you'll never see him say, pray for your mother, pray for your friends, pray for your brother, pray for, people you love and like. Almost always he's saying, pray for your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, pray for those who wrong you, right? And things like that. Like I'm going to go through the verses. There's so many of them in the Bible that when you look up when Jesus is talking about prayer, a lot of the time he's talking about praying and fasting for your enemies and for people who've hurt you and have done you wrong. And, one of the most powerful verses where I actually see somebody who prays for their enemies is actually in Psalm 35. King David, probably 80% of the verse he's pissed off because he has all these people coming against him. His enemies are coming against him, and he's all mad and upset in the beginning of the psalm. But there's a very interesting part of it that a lot of people miss in Psalm 35:12-14. He says, malicious witnesses rise up. They ask me of things I do not know. They repay me evil for good, to the sorrow of my soul. But this is the interesting part that a lot of people miss in verse 13. But as for me, when they were sick, my clothing was sackcloth, mourning. I was in mourning. I humbled my soul with fasting, and I prayed with my head bowed on my chest. I behaved as if I was grieving for my friend or brother. I bowed in mourning as one who's sorrow for his mother. So what Dave's talking about there, calling him Dave, it's like I know him personally, King David, it's very interesting because he's basically saying, he's like, people who I have done good to, and they've turned around and they've stabbed me in the back, and they've done so much evil to me, even though I've been good to them, and things like this, and they're trying to kill me or whatever it is, right? He actually says that he will go into fasting and prayer and mourning for his enemy, just like if his own brother or mother was in trouble, right? So that's really important when it comes to offense, and this is from my own personal experience, guys, when it comes to offense. The best way to kill offense in your heart, I don't care what it is, okay? I've had to pray for enemies where I've had close family members who were sexually abused their whole lives. Well, not their whole lives, but for a good portion of their lives, and emotionally abused, physically abused for a good portion of their lives. And the people that did this, I knew, and I hated them. I wanted to kill them, to be honest with you. For a long time, I thought about killing them, and this wasn't when I was I wasn't a Christian at that time, but you know what I mean? I wanted to kill them, and this festered, and this offense boiled in me for the longest time, guys. Until when I gave my heart life back to God, and he showed me this offense in my heart, right? And the only way, guys, I was able to get rid of that offense, and the only way I've personally been able to find doing that is by fasting and praying for that individual. Now, that being said, it's not going to be easy at all. You know what I mean? It is going to be very difficult in the beginning. I can give you a bunch of other examples when I start praying for people, but in the beginning, I was kind of just monotonely praying like, God bless that piece of crap and just do good to that piece of crap, and my heart wasn't really in it, you know what I mean? But I still was praying for that person, right? And then I found, slowly it's like my heart started changing towards that person, and I would start very honestly in my heart having concern for that person and truthfully and vulnerably praying for that person out of love and not out of spite or not out of just like because I have to and God tells me to do that, right? And my heart's starting to change, right? And so one of the ways that changed me in this regard is I stopped going from when I prayed for my enemies and people that offended me in the sense of where kind of I was just mumbling it, being like, God, just bless that person and just like, if you can do good for them, do good for them. And, I just pray no harm comes to them. No, and it's kind of like a real half crap prayer, right? But I found when like in Psalm 35, where he says, I behaved as if grieving for my friend or my brother or my mother, right? When you have the attitude where you start praying for people that have offended you and done wrong to you in the sense of the love you have for a true friend and a mother or brother or someone you love, and you have that same attitude for your enemies and for people that have offended you, I'm telling you guys, it's like snow melting off of you when it comes to offense, and you will feel that change in you, right? When it comes to forgiving and just praying blessings on your enemies and people that have offended you, and that fence just melts away off of you. Sometimes, it's not going to happen right away, guys. Like, I had to pray forgive somebody and pray for a person for months sometimes until that started melting away and things like that. But I found the quickest way to melt it down is your attitude and the way your heart is set when you're praying for that person. Are you doing it just out of spite and because you have to and the Bible says so, or are you truly looking at it from a standpoint where I'm going to pray for this person and fast for this person in the sense of if my own brother or mother was in trouble, right? So I want to leave that with you guys. And the last thing I'm going to say on the topic is sometimes we don't know how far offense has poisoned our soul and our heart. And sometimes we don't realize that we have in the background of our hearts or the deep parts of our hearts that we are truly offended and that this has been mustering for a while and it's been seated in you for a while. And so, like I say all the time on here, examine yourself, guys, and ask God if there's an area or somebody that has planted that seed of offense in you and that you haven't taken care of. So just ask God, is there any offense in me, Lord, that I have not taken care of? And he will probably bring immediately to, like, almost every time when I ask the Lord that, he'll immediately put somebody in my mind or put on my heart, lay on someone that I didn't realize I had offense against, right? And you just start praying for those people, man. Pray for them every day until you just see that offense just melt off of you. Fast for that person. I know it's crazy. That's the most profound thing ever, to think that you would fast and pray for your enemies, people that have pissed you off and done you evil. You know what I mean? But there's so much joy and treasure in doing that, guys. It'll benefit you more than it will the other person, And so I just want to encourage that. And just remember, think about that today, how Jesus, when he talked about praying for people, 90% of the time he said, pray for your enemies, pray for those that persecute you, pray for those who have wronged you, right? And that's why it brings healing to you guys and healing to your soul when you do so. So I'm at 14 minutes, so I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. I look forward to the Q&A tomorrow. I'm not going to do a video tomorrow. The Q&A is going to be kind of the devotional tomorrow. I look forward to it, guys, and hopefully some of you show up and give me some good questions. I will talk to you guys later, and I hope you have an awesome day. Talk to you later.